Is it coming through back there? I hope so. This is just an exciting time. It's exciting to see so many of you folks back here today. This is the anniversary of our camp. Can you believe that?
100 years ago, in 1926, someone stood on this same land that we're standing on now, looked out at these Blue Ridge peaks and saw not just 550 acres of land, but a classroom for the next generation of leaders. Today, we celebrate not the trees or the dirt of this land, but the tens of thousands of lives changed by what happened on this ground. Hello, my name is Ralph Mayer, and I want to welcome you to the 100th anniversary of Camp Old Indian. So what does 100 years mean? Well, it means thousands of scouts, many thousands of stories. Yes, I've got some stories, but just think how many more thousands there are. It also means millions of hours of outdoor skills and generations of character and leadership development. And let me tell you just a little bit about the Old Indian story.
1926 to now, 2026. Wow, 100 years. Does anybody recognize that mountain? That's the Old Indian Mountain that's right out here beside us. As we look at it, I'm just going to do a couple of quick things here. The Regional Council of the Boy Scouts of America was established. It was not the Blue Ridge Council until, I think, 1936 or something like that. But it was the Regional Council in the beginning. In 24 and 25, again, before this camp, the council operated a summer camp at Hardin's Lake over near Marietta. It was called Camp Slicko-Wan. That was its name at the time. But in 1925, that property was sold by the owners, and so the council needed to find a new camp. So they went a looking, and they found this location for the 1926 camp. In 1926, in December, well before 26, December of 25, the council identified and began fundraising for a new permanent camp right here in Callahan Mountain. That's not a typo, Callahan with an M, it was called N. It has since been changed to Callahan with an N, but that's what it was. In February 26, they began the building of the first mess shack. What I don't know was it on this site where we're sitting right now? I don't know. But the first mess shack was being built. And then summer camp fully opened, and in the newspapers it said, with a full-blooded Indian lad named Goingback Chiltoskey serving on the staff. Well, I had to look him up because I had not heard that name before. And he was born in 1907, part of the Cherokee Nation, the West Cherokee Nation, and died in 2000, but became a very renowned wood carver and sculptor. So if you want to learn more about him, look him up. It's pretty interesting history, where he went to school and all, but he was working summer camp that very first summer. Then in 28, they call it the Brothers Lodge. A bunch of brothers got together, raised some funds to build the first lodge up here. And the swimming lake, it was called Lake Louise at the time. It was built. And then in 1929, they began construction on 7 of the wooden huts at that time. So that was a little history there. And we look at our 1928 Lake Louise, which is, as you see here, this is still the same swimming lake we use now. I don't recognize any of those fellows there, but they were here at that particular time. And the lake kind of looks the same. And then by 1930, they built something called the Fountain House, which if you look out that window right there, that's the Fountain House built in 1930. And when I was on staff here, we had most of our staff meetings in there. Dr. Cox, he would say, all right, staff, after lunch, everybody meet in the Fountain House. And we would go to the Fountain House and meet over there. But it's right there and still standing and looking beautiful. 1936, it was officially named whatever it is now, called Camp Old Indian. What about the geography? A 550-acre landscape, the gateway to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Poinsett Bridge is right down the road here, about a quarter of a mile. If you came by Poinsett, you'll notice they are refurbishing it right now. And they've been doing that for like the last at least 9 months, so soon it'll be open again. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And Big Glassy Mountain is right up here. So we're going to take a look at those in a minute. Glassy Mountain, which you see over here on the left, It's a gated community now with a golf course and a lot of houses and things like that, but at the time, back in our day, it was just an open mountain. So every Friday, we would hike up there. We used to do rappelling, mountain climbing off of there, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then Poinsett Bridge, again, Poinsett Bridge right down the road here, that was the main road between Columbia and Asheville, or Charleston and Asheville for commerce. It was just a dirt road, horse and buggies, horse rode across it, and but it's very famous, called the Poinsett Bridge, designed by Joel Poinsett, and the poinsettia flower is named after him also. Then my son and I were flying over camp not too long ago, and I wanted to share this picture because it shows a lot of the camp here. The dining hall, as you can see, is over there where we are right now. The lake is up here, the swimming lake. You can see the F-shaped dock on the swimming lake. The boating lake is right up here. Parking lot down here. So just a nice aerial view as Jonathan banked the plane for me to shoot some pictures out the window. And what a lot of people don't know is this boating lake dam right here was built in 1968, the winter of 67, 68, I believe it was. But to build it, Mr. Hunter Caldwell took his bulldozers up to the top of the mountain over there where the OA dance circle is now, and bulldozed the top of that mountain down to build this dam, and that created the lake. And for us on the waterfront, Jerry Rance, you'll remember this, before 68, the water was real cold. We come out of that water shivering and shaking all the time. But after 68, that summer of 69, we only got the top 2 inches of water off the boating lake, which had time to warm up. And so the swimming lake felt like, oh my gosh, this is like heaven. It felt so good not to freeze in that water. Just a quick little evolution of facilities. We had Adirondack shelters mostly all over the place. And you see those around, the 3-sided shelters with the open front. Now we have some tree houses. I don't know if you've seen those or not, but after they're right up behind here, you'll see some of those if you want to walk around some. And some of the upgrades. One of the most important to me was the staff washer and dryer that Group Gersies donated to us, I think in 1972 or 2, I think. And we could not have to take our clothes home as staff. We could wash them and dry them right here. And on the waterfront, when you always had wet towels, that was kind of important too. Today they have air-conditioned staff cabins. I can't even imagine, but that's nice. Bathhouses, showers, a rappelling tower, zip line, Wi-Fi throughout the camp. A lot of neat things have changed for us. But what is Camp Old Indian really, when you stop and look at it? It's just a place where scouts can immerse themselves in the outdoors. They eat, sleep, in nature. They learn to appreciate so much of nature. They're learning skills like knot tying and navigation. All of those things form the core of scouting. This guy named David Sloan, you'll meet him again in a minute, and the Dunn brothers, I don't know if the Dunn brothers are here or not, but they were learning to tie knots there. These guys learned to build a fire. There's a funny competition on Wednesday over there that they did. But what about the merit badge journey? As you see a few pictures, and by the way, I've taken all these pictures except those early ones. I wasn't around in 1926. I didn't shoot any of those with. Ever since then, I've taken all these pictures. But the merit badge journey, camp is the primary venue for the scouts to come and get those merit badges where you can be in a safe environment and learn all these things. Whether it be life-saving, wilderness survival, first aid, welding. Come to think of it, first aid probably should come first, shouldn't it, before all the other stuff, so you know how to take care of each other. But these badges, of course, allow scouts to explore hobbies and career paths. And think about that. Many people do not have that opportunity to try out all of these little parts of life. But as you try those out, you get merit badges when you do all the requirements. And you may say, well, I got this, but I don't ever want to do that again. That's possible. Or you got something else and said, well, I love doing that. I would love to do some more of that. And you get to do more of that if you choose to. But you get, the thing is, you get to sample so many parts of life that non-scouts don't get to sample. So that is a beautiful thing. It's also a living community. It becomes a miniature society. If you're up here for a week, you guys have got to work together to keep your campsites clean, to manage your gear, plan your days. And that little miniature society for a troop that's here for a week is great. But if you are here for the entire summer on staff, back in the day we had 10 and 11 weeks of summer camp, so it was a long summer. You have to work together as a society to make it work. Also what I call a structured adventure, because we have organized competitions throughout the week for the scouts, evening campfires, but the cool thing is it becomes like a rhythm of the day, from all the high adventure activities through the day to calming down in the evenings, to campfires and songs and things like that. A good period of reflection and quiet. This is one of the campfires. We were doing a tug of war over the creek down here, and so just for the heck of it, I had my lifeguard. The creek's only 8 inches deep, so you don't need a lifeguard. But I had 2 of my lifeguards stand lifeguard duty as they were doing that. Uncle George Summer up here, he was around the campfire at night, and one of the Indian dance campfires down here on the bottom right. And some of the qualities and life lessons learned up here, and often I figured more so than from lectures, it's almost like you're breathing and you're feeling so much of the learning, and it just kind of comes to you. So I say it's more caught rather than taught. Through living that. Remember we just did the Scout Oath, Scout Motto, and the Scout Law. We didn't do the motto, but the motto, you'll learn that in a minute. But you live that, so you get to learn it. And where's Marshall? That's Marshall Brown up there with the head full of hair. Recognize Marshall. And also, seeing the Camp Bugler up here reminded me when I was a camper in 1963, that was my first year up here. And from the dining hall, well, they had speakers throughout the camp, and they played reveille all the bugle calls on a record, but it's an old scratchy record. So the first thing you'd hear in the morning when you're waking up to the sunrise is it was just, as soon as you heard that, what was going on? But that was, then later we had little buglers, which was really pretty cool. So what are some of the qualities that I learned up here for the Scouts? Self-reliance is one of those big qualities. You got to learn to take care of yourselves and work with each other in the troop. The resilience up here, you have to put up with things like sometimes bugs, sometimes rain, the lack of air conditioning in today's world, since most people live in air conditioning now and they come to camp and don't have it. So that's part of resilience. Teamwork. You learn that in a troop, you have to work as a team in order to make things work for you. Leadership. So the patrol leaders in the Scout troops run their patrols. They learn these leadership skills. The senior patrol leader is kind of over all the patrol leaders, and they work with the younger Scouts to help them through a lot of things. So leadership is a very important thing that kids, I say kids, I want to say Scouts, but sometimes I mix those up. Somebody reminded me one time, kids are baby goats. I don't mean baby goats, I mean wonderful Scouts. Time management. With all the things going on, you've got classes to go to, you've got meals to go to, there are troop activities. You have to learn to manage that time. So you learn some of those skills right up front. And then respect for stewardship, which is learning how to take care of the environment around you and everything. This sign was at camp, it meant a lot to me. And it said, as you can see here, take nothing but pictures and leave nothing but footprints. Well, I must have taken that to heart, because over the years I took a lot of pictures, and this is back in the film days and Polaroid days and stuff like that, most of it. But also left a lot of footprints, as many of you around here have left a lot of footprints. And today it's easy to take pictures. We all have cell phones and can take pictures, but back in the day you had to deliberately want to take pictures, and I did. But what about the leadership and character development? I had a young man tell me recently, he says, being senior patrol leader at camp when I was about 16 years old was probably one of the most challenging and rewarding camps I ever had. The planning, logistics, personnel accountability, and overall responsibility of that whole experience certainly helped shape my future platoon leader and company commander abilities in the Army later on in my adult life. that was told to me by a fellow I know very well. His name is Jonathan Mayer. He's captain in the U.S. Army, Black Hawk pilot, and now flies for Allegiant Airlines. In fact, there's a picture of Jonathan right there. My second son, my middle son, right here. And but this is cool. Something my daughter did. She put together two pictures when he was a Boy Scout, and we were at some air base somewhere. He got to sit in a helicopter and wear the flight helmet. And it must have meant something to him because you can see in the right picture, he became an Army Black Hawk pilot. That was just kind of cool. Thank you. Well, it's on to Yorktown. Okay, Yorktown down in Charleston. There's some of the departments around camp I wanted to hit right quick. Scoutcraft. This is a guy named David Sloan. David, one of the finest gentlemen and scholars I've ever known. He was my roommate when we were directors. He was Scoutcraft Director when I was the Aquatics Director. He was my roommate, but David could tie knots and lash better than anybody I've ever seen. He built bridges over things, bridges over waterfront, bridges over the creek. David, unfortunately, and he went on to graduate from Furman, and then went to med school, became an ophthalmologist, and unfortunately was killed in a car wreck as a passenger, probably I'm going to say 15 years ago maybe. But he just a wonderful individual. And then we look at part of field sports, marksmanship, shotgun, rifle, archery. And archery was first introduced in 1925 before, at the other camp, before it became here at this location. Now, as a photographer, I'm not sure I would have put my star student right in front of the target. I probably would have put him beside the target, but anyway, we do have a picture of it there. And then in 1972, I shot this with some of our staff members shooting archery. And then this past Monday, this is one of our staff members now named Gabe, who was at the archery range. But you'll hear more about the new archery range. It was just built this past winter, so it is really nice and beautiful and covered, so the weather doesn't really matter. Then rifle and shotgun shooting. I don't know if you noticed that guy on the right. Back in the day, I was shooting with a rifle there. And then during staff reunions, we typically have a skeet shooting contest. And as you can see, the winners win gold, silver, and medals in skeet. And, this was not this past year, but the year before, right here. And just looking at the rifle range, I know I'm watching some of you folks want to stand here. Looking at the rifle range, you can see them shooting up here. And then as we look over here, we see more of the Scoutcraft activities. There's David again teaching knot tying. He built this tower, and his towers were so good lashing that kids could climb all over. There was no danger of those things collapsing or falling. David was just that good. The handicraft lodge up here. Now this picture on the upper left are the new totem poles. I shot this past Monday. And those totem poles were laying down. And what I found out was Tuesday, I think it was New Power with the big truck, somebody came, Blue Ridge came and hung the totem poles up, so now they are actually standing. So I want you to be sure to see those down in the Gathering of the Nations Village. Here's a guy doing some rocketry, again, building fires. This picture in the upper right reminds me, today you see people walking down the streets everywhere doing this. What are they doing? Looking at their cell phones, right? What is this guy doing? He's looking at a compass. He's learning, instead of not seeing where he's going, he's learning where he's going. Well, that's one of the skills we learn up here. And it's just awesome. Then comes dining. You guys are in this incredibly wonderful dining room. And I wanted to be aware of this. It's insulated, it's air conditioned, it's just so neat. But I found this picture, probably, I'm going to say 73 or 4 of the old dining hall right there. The old dining hall was probably about 2/3 the size of this one. It was all screened and open, so whatever the temperature, or whatever the weather, whatever the humidity was outside, that's what was in the dining hall. I'll never forget one night, Don and Preston and I, it was spring lodge meeting, and we were doing some visual work in here, I think it was 4, I can't remember the 4th person. We were doing some work in here, and it was like 28 degrees outside. If it's 28 degrees outside, guess what it was in the dining hall? 28 degrees. And we were cold. I just remember being real cold. We had on jackets, and Preston said, you know, I sure would like a carton of milk. I said, I'll get it, Preston. So I walked back into the big old walk-in cooler back in the back. I walked back there to get the milk, and I walked in there and said, the thermometer said 40 degrees. I said, oh, wow, this feels like a heat wave. I said, guys, bring your chairs. Come on in here to the walk-in cooler. So we went in there to finish our work that night because it was 40 in there. It was 28 in here. But today, you don't have to worry about that. We got a beautiful place right here. And we had cooks that were, as Miss Kay and Miss Looper and Miss Kelly, they were full-time cooks in the summer. They were school dietitians during the winter, and they would come here and cook for us all the time. It was just wonderful. But now you see today's dining hall and what it looks like, and it's just such a huge improvement in camp. You see people eating in there just like we're doing today. And there's Joel Chambers and Steve Bailey up there from one of the times here. Now what about international staff? Back in the 70s, I don't know if they still do that or not, but we had international staff exchange students. So we would send somebody from the United States to different countries for their scout camps. We had scouts come from other countries to our scout camp. So I'm seeing on the left a guy named Hans Lanander. He was from Sweden. No, he was here in 1970, to the best of my recollection. Tall guy, Swedish guy, and was great here on staff. Then the next year we had a guy named Kozo Kanayama, a Japanese guy. I was about to be redundant and say from Japan, but that's kind of obvious. But anyway, that's me shaking his hand right there. But it was so cool to have international students and get a little international exposure to the scouting programs in other countries. Now let's move to the waterfront. This was always one of my favorite pictures. I probably shot this in about 74. But the lake back in those days, sometimes would be so clear you could stand on the docks and see the bottom. Not real well, but you could see the bottom. But then it would rain and get muddy again. And but this evening I had walked up to the waterfront, and it was just so reflective, and the colors were so vibrant. I just had to shoot it with Kodachrome slide film, and I used that to kick off the waterfront here. So in aquatics, we do life saving, swimming, canoeing, rowing. And in this picture at the bottom right, at the top right, that's JR on the top, greasing up a watermelon for the Grease Watermelon Contest. And it was for non-swimmers, because they couldn't do a lot of other things. But you would turn loose trying to get that watermelon, which you see on the bottom right. And a grease watermelon in the water is not easy to hang on to. But if you hang on to it and can get it to the dock, then your troop gets to enjoy that watermelon, which is kind of cool. They still do that to this day. Now, Jerry, I want you to see this picture. This is the waterfront staff in 1968, which was my first summer on waterfront staff. And I see this guy right here, Jerry Rentz, and I see him sitting on the steps back there. Jerry, where are you? I saw you. And there's Jerry right here. And he was on staff 68 and 69, and he was lodge chief both of those years too. In fact, I think he's the one who kept me out in OA. And Matt McCroskey was our waterfront director at the time. Paul Smith on the left, Larry Gideon on the right. Paul Smith later became a Navy heavyweight boxer, and he used to use me as a punch bag out here. And but I learned a lot, and I got beat up a lot too. But anyway, that's them. So welcome back, Jerry. Jerry hasn't been here since 1969 back at camp, so he's back today. It's so good to see you, man. And then probably 74, that's me and my waterfront staff. On the left-hand side is my brother Dean Mayer, Mark Bailey, Dee, Joel Fox, and Sandy Jones on the waterfront that particular year. And one of the funniest things we had happen was, for me as a waterfront director, one of my swim instructors was we teach scouts how to swim if they don't know how to swim. So he came to me and said, Ralph, I got a non-swimmer trying to learn to swim, but he's swimming backwards. I said, backwards? How do you swim back? He's splashing up a storm, going backwards. I said, what do you mean? So he came over there, he pointed him out to me, and sure enough, the kid was going backwards. And I said, how do you do that? So I was perplexed. And we kept watching it, but what I learned is, as he was more like pedaling a bicycle, so as his thighs came forward, it was really thrusting him the other way. And he wasn't making any headway. So we worked with him, and about Wednesday morning, we had him where he was at least staying still. He wasn't going backwards, we weren't going forward. We were making progress now, let's keep it up. So we kept working with it. By Thursday, we had him slightly, Thursday or Friday, we had him slightly moving forward. Kid's name was Mike, I remember that. I don't know whatever happened to him, but because I wanted to shot for the example here on the waterfront. And we also teach a lot about boating safety, but we also learned that you can learn a lot about how to do things right by doing wrong. So we had fun working in the boats, getting familiar with the boats. And one of the most important things I think the Scouts learned is when a boat sinks, it still floats. All boats are built with flotation now. So they still float, all of these personal watercraft like this. And just hang on to the boat when it sinks, and you're still good. We teach, of course, life-saving, and in life-saving, we teach them how the last thing you want to do if somebody's drowning is to go after them yourself, because you're probably going to drown yourself too. Even if you're trained, it's very dangerous. So we teach them to reach out with your arm, with the reach pole, with a limb, because so many drownings happen within 3, 4, or 5 feet of a dock or a boat or a landmass. So reach first. If that doesn't work, we throw something to them. In this case, at the waterfront, we use ring buoys. You can throw an ice chest, inner tube, anything that will float to get it to that person. But keep yourself out of the water if you can. The third thing we do, we call it reach, throw, row, and go, because we want to row or paddle a canoe or take a paddleboard or anything we can float on to get out there. Last case scenario, if you have to go after them, you want to be trained. If you can carry something with you that floats, then you can save them and probably save yourself too. So that's some of the fun learning. Well, what about adventure? I became the first high-adventure director while I was waterfront director. I think it was 1973. And going back to Glassy Mountain where we were a while ago, I would take groups up there and we would rappel off the cliffs of Glassy. And it would just be so beautiful because the top of Glassy, I believe, is like 3,300 feet above sea level. You got a nice view. And that's me. In fact, this right-hand picture, a Greenville News photographer came up doing a story on my teaching. And he took that picture of me coming down off of the cliff, which I really like that shot. That's me on the left too. Now, Glassy Mountain, we're still doing that. Thank you, Marshall Brown. Marshall has gotten with the community because it's a closed, gated community now. Marshall has gotten with them. And if you see the chapel, don't have a pointer, but you see the chapel kind of to the right of that picture. Just to the left of the chapel is the cliffs we're using right now, 250-foot cliff, and the Scouts love it. These are senior Scouts who get to go up and they pass some other qualifications in camp, and they get to rappel off that 250-foot thing. And several of us, me, Marshall, Jonathan, a bunch of us, were scouting all that near the alley this past late spring, I guess, to find the right route to come down, but it's been very successful again this year. More adventure here in camp. You probably saw the new zip line out here. It's a dual zip line, so 2 people can go at the same time. And interestingly, in this picture, you see the 2 red things down there, and you see something in his hand. Those 2 red things are, what do you call those things? Oh, no, not target. What? Cornhole. Yeah, cornhole. There you go. I couldn't think of the name of it. There are 2 cornholes, and you typically have 2 guys at the same time, or 2 scouts at the same time going down through there with a bead bag. And if you can hit the hole on the cornhole as you go over, bombs on target, then you win some kind of prize. Well, I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, that's a nice thing there. And other activities we have around camp, we would play ball back in the summer. Remember that one, Don? Somehow I did a double exposure with Don DeCrescent at bat. But we would have a Scoutmaster versus staff softball game every Thursday after lunch. And you would think with the staff working together all summer, we would be better than the Scoutmasters, but it wasn't necessarily so. We probably about a 50-50 thing on whether we won or not. And on this one here, I hit a good double. It was a good solid double. I hit it and I was running. And I remember rounding first base, heading to second, and the grass was wet. Well, I slipped down, and it was easier for me to crawl at full speed to second base than it was to try to get up and run again. So they laughed at me from then on. Said, "Man, you're just a water bug." He said, "You'd rather swim to second base than to run to it." But I made it, I was safe. And just a few other pictures here. Bottom left is some pillow fights in, organized pillow fights. In the middle, now they don't do softball, they do kickball now with Scoutmasters. So this is one of the Scoutmasters running the bases in kickball. Again, the rappelling tower, the zip line, and then we see some of the scouts doing a variety of things. And in the middle there, you'll see Marshall and I think JR, they were building down here in the Indian Village, which I want you to be sure and see. They're building, there's teepees and huts, and why different Indian tribes use different types of dwellings. You'll learn all that down there. So be sure and see that. And speaking of that, the Native American culture in Camp Old Indian is very, very strong. And of course, after the name, Old Indian too. And this is the village that Tony Turner and Marshall and some others. Tony was the project manager on this building down here of all of this, which took like all spring to build. And one of the main financial backers of that too. So we thank Tony and Marshall and all of them for their help on that. And these are the 3 totem poles I told you that went up Tuesday. So they're now up, and they're beautiful. So be sure to take a look at them. Before we only had 1 totem pole, now we got 3 in that village, and it's just worth taking a look at them because they're so beautiful. I shot that yesterday because first time I could get them up and see them there. And then part of the Indian culture, that's my brother, my youngest brother Dean on the left, dressed up in Indian attire for one of the Wednesday night dances. And David Sloan and Ricky Tilley, I believe that's Ricky. Ricky's here somewhere too. Yeah, there he is right here. That's him on the left. And I was shooting down from the attic of the old OA building, shooting down on them as I saw them down there getting ready. And there are the totem poles that were down the other day. Now this is John Gullick. He, in the dances, he would play the part often of the devil, and the devil was always trying to kill one of the warriors, one of the Indian warriors. So he thinks he's killed, this is probably Ricky Tilley right here laying down. He thinks he's killed one, so he's just celebrating. He's cutting the flip over here, celebrating. And at the end, you see that torch he's got, is he's just wildly dancing, and he's just so happy. That torch is just swinging all over the place. So I did a time exposure, opening the shutter speed back there, and you can see the torch going all over the place, and then he throws it out into the woods. And we have some scouts, of course, with buckets of water with the fire out. So it doesn't burn the woods down, but that was just part of that too. And we got to talk about, I got to mention Scoutmasters at Camp Old Indian, and they take so much more than a mention, but I just don't have many pictures of Scoutmasters. I do have Mr. Ernest Bailey up here on the left. He was the camp director when I was up here. Vance George, I believe that is, with Marshall right there, and then V.C. Carlton from Anderson. And this is one of the Scoutmaster meetings on Sunday night in the admin building down there, or the check-in building. Uncle George Summer on the left, I really got to mention him. He was my Scoutmaster down in Newberry. But Uncle George was crippled. He had polio as a kid. The doctors told him he'd never walk again. And he got sent on some kind of scholarship type thing to the Shriners Hospital in Greenville when he was a youngster, and they got him walking again. So Uncle George swore, they told me I'd never walk, I'm going to walk the rest of my life. So it was odd. His body was deformed. His legs were in one place. His torso was over, it's crooked, way over to the side. You can't tell it unless you saw. In fact, that's Uncle George right there on the waterfront. But his body was crooked, so he could not carry the weight of a backpack. But he took scouts to Philmont at least 5 times that I know of. And they would just split his pack up, all of his gear, and carry it, but he could still walk and was very strong. And he also donated many canoes, many rowboats, rifles to the rifle range. He built he was responsible for building the second leg dam, because he was the accountant for Mr. Hunter Caldwell in Prosperity, and he had a big construction company. So he talked him into coming up here and building that dam. So he was responsible, in my book, for doing that. But just an incredible individual. And said, I read his obituary again the other day, and I was a pallbearer there when he died in his funeral. But in his obituary, said he had 100 Eagle Scouts under him. I was his second Eagle Scout. His son, Buddy, was a year older than me and was his first. But 100 Eagle Scouts, can you imagine that? That is amazing. He had a big troop, a really big troop too. Now, the Scoutmasters also have fun. On Wednesday, they have a Scoutmaster belly flop contest on the lake. And I was just trying to shoot some pictures last summer of some of them. And what the object is to see who can make the loudest pop when they hit that water. And that's hard to do. Even when I was an assistant scoutmaster up here with my boys, they put me in the contest. I couldn't do it. I get out there and I know how it hurts. So I just went into a pop and a dive went straight in. So I was no good at it. But these guys were all trying to do it. And then one of the best shots I ever got was this one right here. This lady, Roxanne, she was here this past week from Anderson, I believe. I just happened to catch this picture. She won the contest last year. And she had the loudest pop when she hit that water, but with the camera, look how I caught it. Like she's an inch off the water. That's just like, that's a perfect shot, Ralph. But I just had to show that. And then what about families being influenced by Camp Old Indian and scouting? Very much so. This is my lovely daughter, Kristen, who is sitting right here. She would come up on Wednesdays to visit when I was an assistant scoutmaster later, and my boys were up here. And she now works for Vespers out of Greer, Vespers Chemical. And works here and over in Frankfurt, Germany, and different places, but she's here with us today too. Then my oldest son, Matthew, I think this picture, he was on staff here. It is, but he also was an Eagle Scout, and interestingly, later he went in the Air Force and he was flying the F-15 Eagle. So to be an Eagle, flying the Eagle, I thought it was pretty cool. So he also then transitioned to F-35s, and so that's me and him. And he's like 4 inches taller than me. But he was flying the F-35s, and I remember them telling me in the Air Force that he's so tall that he almost can't fit in the cockpit. So they would measure from the tip of the tailbone, he told me, up to the head, and you could not exceed 40 inches. Well, he was 39 7/8 inches. So they said, son, you grow another 1/4 inch, we're going to have to put you in a B-1 bomber or something. So he started walking around like this, you know, to not be so tall. But he's sitting right here with us. So he now flies for American Airlines out of Charlotte. And I'm just so glad to have them here too, with all my family. So, 100 years of resilience. Our camp has survived 10 decades. Can you believe that? 10 decades. Through the Great Depression, now into the digital age. It's always been a place of unplugged growth. You're unplugged from the rest of the things outside. You get to come spend the week here or summer here and learn all kind of neat things. It's now transitioned from Boy Scouts of America to Scouting USA, and that was just a fall picture I took one fall that I love. So, as we're getting close to the end here, summer camp is often the first time a young person realizes they can solve problems. They can provide for themselves and contribute to a group without the direct intervention of parents. So I think the realization that they are capable, because many times in life they'll say, you're not capable, you can't do this, that, or the other. But they are capable, and maybe the single most important lesson they learn up here, and they go in life thinking back on things they learned here. Yes, I can do this. I've seen others do it. If they can do it, I can do it. So you learn that. Now, one of the things that meant a lot to me back in the day as a scout and also as a staff member was on Sunday nights when all the scouts were here. We'd be up in the administration building right up there, and there'd be 200, 300 scouts up there, and we'd have skits, all kind of things, a lot of activity, but at the end, we did a song, it's called the Vespers song. And it was so cool because you would start out with 200 or 300 people singing this verse. You would sing it over and over and over. Well, they would start filing out very silently. They couldn't speak until they got down the steps and into the meadow. So you heard the song get quieter and quieter and quieter, and finally it just faded out. So our lovely wife Jane is going to come up here and lead us in the Scout Vespers song. I'll put all the words up here so you can see them.
But you guys have to sing with me, all right? Do y'all remember it? All right, y'all gotta sing. Softly
Calls the light of day, while our campfire fades away. Silently each scout should ask, have I done my daily task? Have I kept my honor bright? Am I ill asleep tonight? Have I done and have I dared everything to be prepared?
And just imagine the words of that song mean so much, especially the part about being prepared. Being prepared for most every contingency that comes along. And I have really taken that to heart. And sometimes they can say, "Oh, it's hard too much." Sometimes I'm too prepared. I like to be prepared for whatever comes along, whether it's snow out, whatever. Anyway, so as I close out today, I just want you to think, we've been here 100 years, from 1926 to 2026, and we are now the custodians of this camp. And it's our responsibility as we leave here to make sure for the next 100 years, we're going to come back here and be part of the 200th anniversary. So I want everybody to be part of that as we come back. But meanwhile, the Scouts are going to grow and learn, so let's keep it going. Thank you so much.